So I wanted to do a few things today. One of the things I wanted to do is test out this new recording software I'm trying out, and I have a little bit better microphone that I've hooked up to a new laptop. So it's a completely new system, and just kind of wanted to try it out. And in that vein, I just wanted to show a few things that I've been looking at in connection with GIS and how GIS is progressing forward with different aspects of IT in an IT context and in a geographical context. But now I wanted to start with this idea of REST services because a REST service is not necessarily just ArcGIS, but ArcGIS has very much integrated the idea of REST services into the geospatial paradigm. And, without getting into too much detail, it's an internet protocol. That's what REST is. It's an internet protocol. And it does stand for something, but that's not the issue here. When I'm talking about it, it's always about GIS and GIS services. And in this context, I wanted to start out by showing you what one of ArcGIS REST services look like in a web browser. And this is it. This is actually a REST service directory, and it's published by default by ArcGIS servers. And this one happens to be at WVU here in West Virginia. So what it allows is easy browsing, and it puts it into context of the internet, and it lets you find these services fairly easy, because you can just Google them. There's scrapers and other tools that people use to pull them down and pull them together, but if you know or have an idea where an ArcGIS or a Arc service is that uses the Arc software, you can just Google ArcGIS REST services, and generally it'll get you close. In this case, I'm interested in imagery, so you can see all these imagery layers, and then you get actual down to the map server, and this is the context of the map that it's putting out on the internet. And one of the things I found interesting with that is how this is being used, not only by the Esri, but by other communities. And a community that I like to be a part of is the QGIS community. So here is some of the services that are published just in a quick QGIS file that I pulled off of the West Virginia REST Service server. And the thing that I wanted to show you, though, this is a newer version of the QGIS software that I typically use. I like to use the long-term release, and I noticed the other day that they actually had released a new long-term release, version. And one of the things that is in it now that wasn't before was this idea of connecting to these REST services in a more robust way. Previously, the REST services and QGIS, you had to go down to this level where you were just putting the actual map itself in, and it didn't let you browse too much from the top end. So like if I was putting these folders into QGIS, I would have to put imagery as its own, or not even imagery, but these base maps as their own entry. So I would have to browse them separate, like in this web browser, just browse them and then copy these services. Like if I wanted to leave off, I would have to copy this and paste it in as an entry in QGIS by creating a new entry. But now what QGIS has done is I actually tested this and went up to the topmost REST service library folder and connected to the WVU server. And you can see what it does. It populates it inside of this request dialog. So now I can browse it here and pick the maps that I want from inside an instance. And Drop my mouse. Heck on it. Damn thing go. So I think that's pretty cool. I mean, it makes it a lot easier if you're exploring a website, if you're exploring one of these web services to pull down the mapping. And here's what I made just very quickly with access to those layers inside of the QGIS software. Pulled down a couple neat layers to create this map. It's a map with aerial photography and a DEM overlay with contour intervals. It's pretty neat. And I put structures on there for good measure. I wanted to see what their structures look like. There's a couple of ways to get structures nowadays. One of them is from some freeware, or some freeware data that was published by Microsoft. And another way is to do it by extracting it from LiDAR. So kind of interested to find out what they were using here. But anyway, this leads me to the second little freeware tool I want to show you. And this is called the GIS Surfer. And I found this while I was out in California, and a gentleman on the internet has programmed this. He actually programmed it back in the day when he was using a lot of the freeware that was being offered by Google. And that's something I noticed in QGIS too. A lot of the tools that QGIS offered, freeware sources to do some of the tasks, and they're starting to remove those. I mean, if they're not being removed, they don't work because Google went to a different model. And so this gentleman here, his name is Joseph Elfelt. Elfelt. I'm bad with that. I'm obviously butchering it. But Joe had to shift all his programming to another source, and he's been working on it. So this is what it looks like now. And he uses this. I thought it was on here. It's called Leaf. I think it's a software that's basically a programming. Oh, here it is right here, Leaflet. And I think Leaflet, as it says here, is powered by Esri. So Leaflet's a powerful open source programming language that interfaces with these types of REST servers. So I wanted to show you what Joe had done here because it's really phenomenal, and I like it a lot. I was a big fan of his programming, before the shift, and now it looks like he's got it back to the same point where it was prior to that, big shift from Google. But there's a menu here that lets you add and control different add-ons and link to different pages. And then there's base mapping that it lets you bring in. Oh, shoot. My cat's bothering me. Keeps knocking my mouse off. Anyway, so the base maps is, you can load them here, and here's some default base maps. And here's some links to recommended type maps that can be attached. But look here, you can add GIS overlays of your own. So, and the way to do that here is you go to that REST service and copy it. Oh, wrong one. And paste that in there. Send a request. And look at that. Here it is again. So I can click basically the same layers that and do the REST service GIS server surfing, just like I did inside of QGIS previously. So let me click a layer and look, it adds it, and it adds it quick. It's amazingly fast. I really like the structure of it and the speed of it. I mean, and you know, you can manage your overlays, and one of the things I know that it'll be is a very powerful solution for quick map making in the future. And you know, one of the things I was talking to Joe on his olds, the only I think he's back to the point where we were prior to removing the Google Freeware aspects of it. But the thing it doesn't do right now that I mentioned to him in the past, and he's probably working on it right now, is controlling the transparency of the layers. So I think he's on his way to creating a great product right here, if not already. I mean, the only reason you need to control transparencies is based on how many layers and things that you want to add to it. So he may have that already in another more detailed way to control the creation of these interactive maps. But anyway, I love where all this is going, and I think it's great to be able to put a lot of data out there that is relevant to distribution and space. And this is where things are moving. I mean, you have to be able to put your content out there and map it. That's the bottom line. So that's all I have. Enjoy.